If you're looking for some horror movies to watch on Hulu, I have a few recommendations for you. Let's dive into it. First up is Cobweb, one of my favorite horror movies of 2023 so far. This is a horror fairy tale about a young boy who begins hearing strange noises coming from his bedroom wall. When he tells his parents about it, they brush him off, say it's in his imagination, but he starts to think that his parents might be hiding a dark secret. This one is so much fun. It starts as one thing and then becomes something completely insane bonkers. I would describe it as the perfect mix of scary stories to tell in the dark / goosebumps meets Malignant and Barbarian. The violence and gore in this are over the top. It's so much fun and the cast is excellent. There's just so many fun moments in this one and it's set entirely around Halloween. So it is the perfect Halloween watch. Next is another 2023 horror movie, The Boogeyman. So this is based on the Stephen King story of the same name that is featured in the short story collection Night Shift. This centers on a family who are being tormented by a mysterious monster. The Boogeyman. It's a classic story, but this is an interesting spin on it. It's basically a look at grief and how it can consume you. I love the cast in this. I think it's great. It has some really creepy moments and I love that it plays with the darkness and light. I think it's a really spooky, atmospheric watch with a great emotional story. Then we have Slotherhouse, which is another 2023 horror movie, another favorite. So this is about a young sorority girl who is struggling to fit in with her sorority and she really wants to be the president of her sorority house, and she has a chance encounter with this weird guy at a mall and he offers her the opportunity to adopt a sloth. She adopts it and brings it home and declares this sloth the new mascot of her sorority, and everybody loves it, everybody loves her, and things are all fine and dandy until she forgets to give the sloth its anxiety medicine and it starts going crazy and killing everybody. This is such a campy, fun, silly, over-the-top horror slasher that I think balanced the horror and ridiculousness perfectly. I found myself laughing out loud at points and I think it's just overall an entertaining watch. It doesn't take itself too seriously and I think that's why I loved it so much and I think it's gonna be one of my favorites of the year. Then we have Stephen King's Rose Red, which is a miniseries about a group of psychics that are brought to this infamous haunted house called Rose Red to basically study it and bring the house alive. And obviously when they get there, things start to go wrong. I believe this one is about 4 hours long. It's 3 episodes. It's really fun. The cast in this is excellent. The vibes and atmosphere are just top tier. It's the perfect cozy horror watch, especially for the fall season. And I love this house. I believe it's based on the Winchester house, so there's so many rooms that don't make sense and the house changes and it's essentially alive and has its own personality. And I love how it messes with the people inside the house, so you don't really know what's real and what's not. And I just think it's a really fun haunted house story. Then we have Piggy, which is a 2022 horror movie that kind of fell under the radar, I think. It's about an overweight, bullied teenage girl who becomes kind of friendly with this mysterious stranger who happens to like killing people. And he starts killing people in her community and she gets wrapped up in it and it's just a really interesting story. The main actress is excellent and I just love watching her journey through this. It has high tension vibes to me, but it doesn't go to the level of extremeness that High Tension went. The story goes to places that you don't expect it to go and the lead character does things that you don't expect of her and I thought it was excellent. Then we have another 2023 sci-fi horror. This one is No One Will Save You and this stars Caitlin Dever. And this is basically an alien home invasion story and it's about this young woman who is isolated from the rest of her community. She's basically alone, she's alienated, and then one night she's visited by real aliens and she has to fend them off. This story is really unique because it gets right into the action immediately and it doesn't let up until the very last moment. I think it's also interesting because the lead character barely says a word. She says like 1 or 2 words throughout the whole thing, so it's all just her emotions and her physicality that is taking you through this movie, and Caitlin Dever is fantastic. You cling to everything she's doing, every movement she makes, every facial expression. She's just so good at making you care about her without even uttering a word. And I think it's an interesting story. about grief and loss and just overcoming certain things. I think that it was a little long for me and the alien stuff wasn't really my jam, but I think overall it was a really creative story and the way they told it was really fun. Then we have The Plague, which is not that good of a movie, but it's still fun. It's from 2006 and it stars my boy James Van Der Beek, aka Dawson Leary from Dawson's Creek, and it's kind of like a Village of the Damned type story where this small town, all the children in the town fall into a coma for like 10 years and then one day they all start waking up, but when they wake up, they're completely different. I just think it's fun, it's silly, and it's a fun take on that Village of the Damned story, and I love me some James Van Der Beek. Next, we have Saw. As you know, Saw X just came out, and it was fantastic. If you're feeling that need to revisit the Saw series, check out Hulu because they have Saw 1, 2, 3, I think 4, 5. They have like the whole Saw collection on there right now, but if you watch any of them, it should be Saw, the first one, which I think is the best one. It's a horror thriller, it's a detective story, and it introduces us to the infamous serial killer known as Jigsaw, who puts his victims into these really dark and disturbing traps that they have to get through and complete in order to survive. It's just a fantastic story and it's just so much fun. The traps are so much fun. They're over the top. I love Saw. Saw X really made me realize how much I like Saw. So if you want to revisit them like me, they're on Hulu. So there you go. We have Stoker, which is from Park Chan-wook. Sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, but he's the same director who did films like Old Boy, Thirst, and many others. And this one centers on a mysterious and weird young girl who lives with her mother, and their lives are kind of changed after the death of the girl's father and the arrival of her charming uncle who she never knew existed. And she becomes really close to this uncle and they go on a weird little journey together. This movie is weird, it's dark, it's psychological horror, so it's a bit of a slow burn. Just want to spread some love about Stoker. It's a movie that kind of fell under the radar, or I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about, and now you can revisit it because it's on Hulu. Then we have The Last Exorcism, which is a found footage horror about a priest or a pastor who is struggling with his faith, and he decides he wants to leave the ministry, and one of the things he wants to do is expose how fake exorcisms are. So he invites this film crew to come with him to record his last exorcism. But when he gets there, he realizes that he may be dealing with an actual possession and things go crazy. I think that this is such a creative spin to the possession horror trope. I think the lead pastor, played by Patrick Fabian, is fantastic. He's so charismatic and likable, and you believe everything he's saying. Then we have Ashley Bell, who is absolutely fantastic as Nell, the possessed girl. The way she moves her body and just the physical performance alone is fantastic. And it has a really interesting mystery at the center of it, and I think that a lot more people need to give it more love because it's a fun found footage horror movie. We have Watcher from 2022. This is a psychological thriller about a young woman who is living in a foreign country with her husband, and she begins suspecting that the neighbor across the street is watching her. It's a story filled with dread and paranoia. It really highlights the terror that a woman feels and can go through in everyday life, and how often people don't listen to our fears when we express them, and just how those fears all come to a head in a really horrifying way. And Micah Monroe is fantastic. The setting is incredible. It's super atmospheric and unsettling, and I love it. It was one of my favorites last year. Then we have The Vigil from 2019, which is a religious horror about a young man who has to sit with a body in the home overnight. He's from an Orthodox Jewish community and he's gone through some trauma. He's kind of struggling with his faith, but he agrees to do this, which is a part of their religion, and throughout the night he starts experiencing some strange activity. I think this is a really interesting look at religion, and so often the religion that we see is Catholic or Christian, so I thought this was interesting to see this Orthodox Jew and what he went through and just how he's struggling and how they live. And it's a story about guilt and grief and overcoming that, and I think it was really well done. And lastly, we have Appendage, which is from 2023. This is a Hulu original, I believe, and it's about a young woman who is dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and it starts to come out through her body. This is a body horror, and I think it needs to be on your radar. And there you have it. Those are a few horror movies on Hulu that I think are worth checking out if you haven't already. Let me know what movies on my list you've watched or you're interested in checking out. Any movies I may have missed that are on Hulu. And thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye.